Are you trying to connect CloudConvert to n8n and getting stuck in the process? If you're using a cloud-based n8n instance, the CloudConvert community node cannot be installed, and even if you could get it installed in the self-hosted version, I feel the CloudConvert node is not very clear or reliable to use. That is why in this video I'll show you how to connect directly to the CloudConvert API step by step in your n8n instance, along with access to free blueprints that you can make use. This video also serves as a typical guide to the CloudConvert API. So without any further delay, let's get started. Okay, so you gotta go to Google and search for CloudConvert API docs, and then just select the first one. And this is basically the documentation of CloudConvert's API. And firstly, we gotta authenticate the API. So for that, you gotta go to Overview, and you can see authentication. So they've got like two types of authentication. One is OAuth, and the other one is API. The API is very easy to use, so we could go with that. So you just gotta click on Create an API key, and it would ask you to create a new account if you've not yet created the account, and verify the email and so on. And after that, you just gotta click on Create New API Key and just make sure that all of these scopes are enabled. And now you just gotta copy this API key and make sure you save them in the automation that you're using. So in this case, this is basically the n8n blueprint that you'd be getting, which contains the necessary endpoints that you can use for CloudConvert. So let me put that API key over here. Let me go into this one, and here let me just paste it over here. So the other two are something related to a platform called Bluesky. So I've made a video related to Bluesky in my previous video. The video right before this video is related to that. So I've used CloudConvert for that. So yeah, so this video is just basically, I've used CloudConvert over there, so I thought I'd just make a separate dedicated video for that. So I'll link that in the description. You could have a look if you want it. So yeah, so I've put the API key inside this, and let me go back over here, and let us just have a look at the other endpoints and features. So this is basically how you authenticate using the API. And after that, I'm not going to cover every single endpoint over here, but the ones that I'd be covering are convert files and optimize files and this jobs. So once you get to understand these, the rest of all is 90% going to be the same concept, right? So let us first have a look at convert files. Okay, so in order to convert a file, you got to use this specific endpoint over here, and you just got to use this body. So for this, you got to give an input and the input file format. So let's say if you don't know the input file format, what it is, let's say you're converting an image and you don't know the format, or if the format could vary, just cut out this part over here. You would just cut that out and just specify the output that you want, right? And if you're using PDF, you can mention the page, or else you can just cut that out. And optimize print is not something important, but if you want that to get optimized, or some sort of compression is needed for that image, you can enable it as true, or else you could just delete this aspect. All right, so this is basically how the body looks. So what this input, the first one, means is that this is basically the file that we're uploading. So how we could get this ID over here is by importing the file inside CloudConvert. So once you import the file, you would get this ID, and then you got to mention that ID that of the file that you just uploaded, and then it would start to process and convert that file. So how you could import a file inside CloudConvert is using this endpoint over here. So you could import it as a URL upload. So we could just use it as a URL. So you could see this is how you do it, right? So let me go to n8n and show that endpoints to you. So you can see this is basically the upload link where we import the URL over here. So the authorization is bearer. Now it shows red color because I've disconnected this, but here's where you would enter the API key. You would reference the API key that you've entered inside this area over here. And after that, let us have a look at the body, how it looks. So this is basically the body. So you can just copy and use it exactly. Here is where you just got to replace the URL. Okay, so here's where you'd be referencing the URL that you got to convert, right? So once you put this URL, it would just return you the file ID. And after that, you could use this one is for optimize. Let me go to this one. This is where it has the convert, but it is the same. So first you import it exactly the same. So over here you see I've referenced another file which is not accessible right now as I've disconnected. So once you reference that file, then you convert. So this is the convert endpoint that I just showed over here. So first we import, get this ID, get this file ID, and after that we go to convert files, and we reference the ID over here. So for that, you can see what I did was for input, I give the ID that I just got from the previous one, and for the output format I say JPG, and the file name I say example.jpg, or like whatever file name that you want. So over here over here, what I've done was previously I've entered it as a raw, but here I've just, this one, sorry. Previously I've entered it as using JSON, but now I'm just using it as using fields below, which means that this would like automatically convert it into a JSON. It would recognize itself as a JSON. So if needed, I could just do exactly using this method over here and, enter this, this one, which is to convert. I could enter it like this as well. So since we're converting an image, I don't know the input format, so I'll delete this part, and the output is going to be JPG, and the pages is not required as I'm not converting a PDF, and this is also not required, which is optimized print. So now let me take this extra comma. So now it becomes a valid JSON format. So you could use it like this as well, right? So the output name, I think we got to give an output name. So you get that idea, right? So this is how we do this. And after that, we wait for a while in order for this image to get processed. And after that, what we do is get the results. So for that, we need to go over here. You can see tasks. Under tasks, you can see show a task. So we just got to give in the task ID over here and check the process of that state. And if it is finished, we could just, complete that, get that final result. So to get a task, we need to put in the task ID, and the task ID, we would be able to get that from convert files. Under convert files, once you send this payload to convert, once you put in the file ID that you've imported and send this request, it would just immediately give you an ID meant for that specific task over there. So once you get this ID, you could just wait for a while and then check the status of this ID. And if it is completed, we just download the file. So you can see we get the results, and after that we say export. So what the get results give you is basically the sorry about that. So what this get results give is basically the final result. So for the final result is again not given in a URL. It is just given as an ID. Like we take the URL and then convert it into an ID, give it into the API, and then the API would again give us an ID. And now we got to convert that ID, the file ID, the final result of the file ID. We would need to again convert that into a URL. For that, we just use this endpoint over here, get results. So once you get that file ID, once you get that file ID and reference it over here, you just get the final URL. So now you can just make use of that in your automation. So I understand it could be a bit confusing, but let me give you like one last walkthrough. So it's like you upload a file, you upload a link, and that link is converted into an ID that CloudConvert recognizes, and then that ID is given in the convert endpoint so that it could convert that file. And after that, we're waiting for a while. And after that, we get the results of that specific task that we've created over here using the ID that this specific one returns us. And we get the results. And after that, we export it. And once we say export, it would take like few seconds for that export to get processed. So that we again wait for 10 seconds. 15 is recommended, like based on what you're trying to process. If you're trying to process big video files that take, hours of your time, in that case, this is not recommended. We got to use webhooks, which I'll cover within a few minutes. So we get the results, export it, and after that we wait a while, and this exporting also has like a unique ID. And now we got to take that export tasks ID and get the results of that task over here, which would actually have the URL. So I could basically do a run for y'all. So I'll disconnect this, or not just this, but completely. Let me disconnect all these and connect it over here and see if this works or not. And for the image URL, I'll get a beautiful butterfly over here, copy the image address, come back. Amazing, we just got an error. It's because the file was not referenced correctly. Like I referenced this with something else actually. Now let me reference it correct. This part over here. Let me refresh the page and do it again. So now let me run this. Connection. So you can see that it is running. So first we upload that image link. So this is the image of that butterfly that I just got. And after that we get the ID, and after that we put that ID inside to convert that image by using the image ID that we just got from the previous one. Then we wait for it to get converted. After that we get the results, and once we get the result, we get an ID of that specific result, which is the final file, which is the end file. After that we gotta use this ID, and we got to tell it to export that file over here. So once we say export, that exporting also is considered as a different task. So it would give a separate ID for that specific task over here. So once we get that ID, we wait for a while in order for that task to get completed. And after that, at the end, we just use this task ID that we got over here and just get the results. We just reference that task ID over here. You see, we just reference that over here. And after that, we get the final URL. The final link is over here. So the input that I've given is basically a PNG, but the final output that we got is JPG. So this is how this process works. This is exactly the same for this one. So this one is convert a file from one format to another, and this one is basically for compressing the file, this endpoint over here. Okay, so all right, this is how this works. Now the biggest disadvantage of this is, you see how many nodes we've got over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nodes. So we got to process them, each one of them individually, right? So now comes the main concept of the CloudConvert's API. So this one is completely for your understanding, and this method completely works, all right? But there is next one called as jobs, okay? The jobs endpoint, which means that it allows you to perform all of these tasks in a single request, which means you don't have to do them individually, like how we did over here, right? So for that, you can see we say convert image, we use this jobs endpoint. All right, so before that, let me go back over here, and you can see this is the jobs. Let me say create a job, and what we do over here, like I said, first we gotta import the file, then to perform the action, let's say convert, and after that we get the result, export, and so on. But over here, what we do is we import the file in this function, and after that we convert the file, and then we export the file. All right, so we just do everything in a single request. So as you can see over here, this is basically the payload that we would be using to create jobs. So first is that we import the file, convert it, and then export the file. Okay, so that is exactly what I've done over here. So in this case, they've used for import, they've used import S3, but we'd be using the one called import URL. Feel a bit hard to pronounce that name. Yeah, so we'd be using this specific endpoint over here. So when we go back, and that is exactly what I've used over here. So let me run this one, and you can see that for the task, I've said import my file, and after that it is import URL, and you just got to come back over here, and you can see this one. So right after v2, we've got this function called import URL. So we just got to copy that. I just copied that and put it inside this one as the operation, and after that I specified the value of the URL over here. I just put that key, and for the value I just map it from the previous one, which is this one right here. Just drag it and put it over here, and after that, once that file is uploaded, we just convert. I just give this a name. You could just give it whatever name you want. Okay, and after that, it's like giving a name to the function. After that, the operations, I say it as convert. So for that, again, let us come back over here, and at the top we could see here is convert files. So right after v2, we've got this convert. So I just mentioned that convert over here, and after that, for the input, so for convert, I said before that we need to give it an ID, right? So for the input, we would just specify the ID that we get from the top one. So for that, we would just need to exactly reference this name over here inside this input. You could see I've exactly referenced this name inside this one. All right, so that it would then recognize the ID and then use that specific file ID to process the conversion. And for the output, I just specify the output format as JPG. So once the converting is done, after that we export the file. For that, again, the operation is export/URL as shown over here. Come to this one, say export files URL, and you can see export/URL. We do this one, okay, and after that I specify. So again, like I said, again once we convert, we would get an ID. So we got to export that file ID into an URL. So for that, we just reference that from the top one, which is convert my file. So I just put convert my file. I just reference that so that it is able to get that ID and then do the exporting. Okay. So once the exporting is finished, again, it would return you a final ID. All right. It would just return you a final ID. Then you just got to wait for that exporting to be done. I mean, the exporting would be already done, but I just added like a 5 seconds delay for some, for some sort of staying safe purpose. And after that, I referenced that ID over here. You can see I referenced that ID over here. So we just got to make sure that we reference the final ID, which is for this one, not the ID that we get from either of the first two. So this is 0. The array index would be 0 for the first, 1 for this, and 2 for this. So you can see once we export, we just want to get the URL of the exported file. So that's why I've set 2, which reference the final export task. And over here, we would just get the URL. So let me run this. So you can see that we've uploaded it inside. And after that, we've set to convert. We've set to convert. Yeah, this is 0, which is we uploaded. We set to convert. And after that, we set to export. So we got to use this export my file ID to retrieve the final URL. So after that, let us wait. We don't have to, but I'm just running that. Move to the next one. Then after that, when I say get result, you can see now we've got the final result, which is the URL of this. Sorry about that. Now you could ask me like, why can't we add this also inside this tasks over here, which is the same question that I had. But if you try to notice, like if you try to notice all of these endpoints over here, which is for import URL, import, convert, and export, you can notice that all of them are post requests. Okay, let me go back. Let me show it over here because that is exactly over here. So for upload, it's a post. Then to convert, it is a post. After that, to again export, it's a post. And then to get the result, it is get. So this endpoint, which is the tasks, cannot be used in jobs. All right, so that is the reason we use that as a separate module over here. And after that, what I do is I download the image and upload to Google Drive. The other thing is, like, once I get the URL, once I get the final result, the final link, I wanted this to get, convert this into, I just want to optimize the file. All right, so I just want to shrink the file. Let's say, like I said, I was trying to explore this platform, the Bluesky. And, for that, the size should always be less than 1 megabytes. So for that, what I need to do was, so I had to compress that file less than 1 megabytes. So once that compression, let me run this. So we download the file. Oops, I don't know what happened over here. All right, so now we download the image and we upload the image to Google Drive. And then the next phase over here that you could see over here, this one is basically for optimizing, which is compressing the file. So this one is exactly the one that I've done over here, which is compress. So it is called the optimize, which would be right here, right? Which should be right here. So again, we do the same. We upload the link, get the ID, compress, get the compression result. After that, we export, right? So that is what I've done as a job right here. So again, I do the conversion. So let me open and show you the payload. So it's like I given the URL, which I get from the Google Drive. So the URL that we were getting over here, the URL that we got from over here does not seem to be supporting inside this one, okay, for some reason. So this is a downloadable link and maybe CloudConvert. So basically it's that CloudConvert does not support a URL that it gets from itself. I hope that makes sense. So this is an output that we just got from CloudConvert, and you try to feed that back inside CloudConvert, it is not accepting because I first converted the image and then I'm just trying to compress. So yeah, that is what it was. So since it was not accepting that, I just tried to download that. I just tried to, download that, upload it inside Google Drive and get that as, a web content link. And then I process that to compress the file. Okay, so I just put that URL inside this one and I say the operation is optimized, and for input I say import my file from the top one where I just uploaded, and after that the input format is JPG. It is always going to be JPG because right before this process only I just converted the image to a JPG, right? So it's always going to be JPG, so I mentioned that. Then the quality I set it as 50. So the quality would depend upon like how you want it. So for Bluesky, I thought 50 was a good level, so I just kept the quality as 50. And after that, again, we export it. We just export the URL and wait for the results, get the results. And after that, this one is a whole another, it's a completely different topic, which is related to Bluesky. Like I said, I've already made a video about that. I'll link it down in the description. So yeah, so once we convert this, we'll run this one. I guess I kept it for 20. How many seconds did I keep? Oh, 15 seconds. That's a good one. And then we just get the results. So you can see as a result, we now get, we get the compressed compressed file that could be supported by Bluesky. So after that, we download that file, then log into Bluesky and get the authorization token. Then I've kept the download twice. It's not really necessary. Yeah, once we download, I guess, oh, I'm sorry, I think this should be the one. I mean, this one was something extra, not required. Delete that. Yeah. So we log in and we download the image that we just got from here. So this is the URL. So we just do a HTTP request and get the buffer data, and we upload the image to Bluesky, and then again we create the post. And then we create the post. So this is how this API works. All right. So like I said, the jobs. So the jobs is the most important thing. And this one is basically like giving each, let's say you're making 10 or 20 requests, and you could just specify and give names to each of those requests. You could just make those distinct, like you could use this as a distinct value that separates each request. Like if you want to recognize a specific request, you could just give it a name using this tag, and you could just recognize that. All right, this is it. So this is basically the concepts that would apply to the other endpoints as well, using the jobs. And first you got to import the file, and then you got to do that processing, and then export the file, and then get the results of that exporting. All right. So you could do that as a job or an individual one like I've did over here, but it looks a bit messy and takes a while, not very effective. But this perfectly works as long as you add correct time delays. Just add how many hour in, maximum you could do. I think 15 is always recommended, 15, 20. So let's say you're processing a big files. In that case, what you got to do is use webhooks. All right, you could use create a webhook endpoint and create a webhook, and whenever a job is finished, you could see events, a job failed or a job finished. Whenever a job is finished, it would immediately send a trigger to that webhook. All right, so you don't have to keep time delays as shown over here. You don't have to keep time delays, a big time delays. Instead, you could use those webhooks, right? So this is it for the CloudConvert video. So please, okay, sorry. So please feel free to let me know any doubts in the comment section. I'll make sure I answer each one of them. And thank you so much for taking your time and watching this. And if you want to work with me, please fill in the form or book a call with me using the link given in the description. And thank you so much once again. Bye-bye.